So if you have any kind of reproductive problem, maybe you have a stress problem, a sleeping problem, maybe you have a fatigue problem, maybe you have brain fog. If any of these are you, then you may have had a cortisol laboratory test done. And that may be via a Dutch urine test, a saliva test, or perhaps a blood test. And maybe your cortisol levels have come back a little bit abnormal, and maybe you're just not quite certain what that means. Well, I want to talk to you today about how important and how significant those little changes can be to virtually every single cell in your body. Hey, I'm Trevor Jacuti, and if you're loving our videos, please like and share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, turn on notifications, and we'll keep you up to date with the latest in all the information we produce. All right, so let's talk about cortisol, because cortisol is not just another hormone. Cortisol is actually one of the most important hormones in the entire human body. In fact, pretty much with the exception of perhaps your knee meniscus and the cornea of your eye, virtually every single cell in the body will be affected by this hormone. And it should have a very high level in the morning, and it should become progressively lowering as the day goes on. But more importantly, there's a very specific ratio that should be maintained between cortisol and DHEA at all times if you're going to maintain good health. And this is what I want to talk about today, is that what is the impact of changing that cortisol DHEA ratio? So at the back here, this is a bit of a complicated chart I want to run through very quickly with you. This is out of my postgrad work on this material. So I just want to run through this quite briefly for you because it looks really complicated and is to a great extent quite complicated. All right, so this is our cortisol DHEA changes. So we're getting an elevation in cortisol and a reduction in DHEA, or relative. So we can group all this stuff into different areas, okay? So when we start at the top here, firstly we get brain-related changes that occur. The big one is our hippocampus, which you've heard me talk about before, which sits on the side of your head. And your hippocampus really is, I should say on the side of your head, sorry, temporal lobe of your brain. And the hippocampus really is about navigation, short-term memory, anxiety control, spatial awareness, visual memory. This is really our hippocampus. But in bigger terms when it comes to this stuff, the hippocampus is the off switch for our stress hormones and cortisol. As we keep going through, we have immune changes that are occurring. So we changes in our T cells. We have cytokine changes as well that are occurring. And these things are all altering our immune responses, and they tend to shift us towards a T helper cell 2 response. We have more brain-related changes that are occurring in terms of the anterior cingulate gyrus. The anterior cingulate gyrus is like your gear shifter. It's what stops you from being negative fixated. And this is a big thing that happens with a lot of people who are under stress, where something goes wrong and you just can't let it go. And this is something that often happens with this. And we often talk about this being too many ants, automatic negative thought process that are occurring. We have changes to our gut. So down here we have, I'll just choose a different color here, we have all these changes that are happening down here towards our gut. Barrier protection system breakdown, changes to our good bacteria ratios, changes to the actual mucosa levels, absorption changes within the gut itself, which potentially lead to various deficiencies which can affect the precursors to prevent cortisol and DHEA being produced properly. We have all of our hormonal changes down here. So we have changes in things like luteinizing hormone, estrogens, progesterones, gonadotropin releasing hormones, changes in liver function leading to changes in neurotransmitters and hormone breakdown, which further creates problems with our hormones. More immune related stuff in terms, we tend to get an increased risk of allergies with people who have this, and that may have something to do with changes in histamine because of adrenaline changes. We have changes to our musculoskeletal system. So we tend to lose bone density, we tend to have breakdown of tendons, breakdown of muscles, especially type 1 muscle fibers when we start having high amounts of cortisol. We have changes to our blood sugar mechanisms which lead to insulin changes, cardiovascular changes, potentially obesity, triglyceride shifts, and the list keeps going on and on and on and on. So something as simple as just having perhaps a slightly elevated cortisol compared to your DHEA may seem nothing significant, but what we can see is we're getting brain changes, thyroid changes, immune changes, gut changes, hormone changes, liver changes, blood sugar changes, musculoskeletal changes, all as a result of those little things. And over time, those little things can start becoming more and more significant, more and more built up. If you're an athlete, can potentially increase your risk of injury. If you're trying to get pregnant, can potentially affect your ability to fall pregnant. There's a whole lot of different things that can come from it. So when we start seeing these little labs that say cortisol, DHEA-S is usually what it will say. Sometimes you'll get them done as part of your blood test from your GP, and there's a little bit of shift to them and you think, oh, it's not too big a deal. Or you perhaps get a Dutch test done or a saliva test done and it's a little bit off and you think, hey, it's not too big a deal. Have a look at the bigger picture of what could be getting affected by what you've just seen, because it can be profound, it can be prolific, and likewise, doing little things to normalize your stress hormones can potentially have just as significant effects on a positive manner about getting your life back on track, getting your health back on track, and stopping the fatigue, the brain-related changes, the immune responses, and all these other things that are associated with it. Anyway, guys, I know this is a little bit complicated, and this really is part of postgraduate material. This is not something I normally talk about with patients in this level of detail. But if you do have any questions at all, please just post them up. I'm more than happy to have a chat to you about any of these things that you may be experiencing, and perhaps give you an idea of what you might be able to do to get through it and get to the other side of it, because these mechanisms can be dealt with as long as you get to the right causes and know how to manage them properly. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. If you do have any questions, send them through to me. Otherwise, I'll catch up in the next vid. Bye for now.